Welcome back to the Pursuit Podcast. Today, we're going to be taking a look at how to get paid to work in open source. Before we get started, a quick thank you to Neximo, our sponsor. They provide APIs that let you quickly add voice, SMS, verification, or a whole host of other tools into your development workflows. If you want to thank them, they're at Neximo Dev on Twitter, or you can see more of what they do at neximo.com. I'm your host, Jessica Rose.
I'm here today with
Ola Gasidlo, and I'm a software engineer at Mozilla.
And you and I are going to talk about making a living off of open source today. Can you tell me a little bit about what you do at Mozilla?
I work on web compatibility and specs. I also work on performance and dev tools.
So you work on everything?
Like a lot, yeah.
And can you talk to me a little bit about your background, and especially your background with open source?
Yeah, so I am a nerd. I started coding.
I love how your background starts with, I'm a nerd.
So I was always very interested in computers, but didn't have a community back then because I was living like far outside on the countryside. I worked for a very long time for like agencies and like big companies, and that kind of was nice, but like never fitted in.
More just a job.
Yeah, I didn't fit the job, which was okay, like definitely okay, because it wasn't my type of what I wanted to do. I like to enable people. I like to make things better, and building advertising pages didn't seem right.
You weren't passionate about advertising landing pages?
Nah, not really.
That's fair. Maybe not for everyone.
And at some point, I was super lucky, and an open source project was looking for people. And I was a single parent, like a solo parent already. And they were like, hey, you're a great fit because you can work 3 times. Like, okay. I don't know much about open source, but why not? And same time, I actually started helping organizing conferences, which was perfect because there were community conferences.
So you thought, I've got a job and I'll work on open source and I'll run conferences and I'll be a parent.
Yeah, this is what I do.
What did you do with all that free time you had? So you must have had like tons of time left over after all of that.
Oh yeah, you have to spend some time on the playground, right?
What was the open source project you got started on?
It was called Hoodie.
Oh, Hoodie.
Do you know it?
Let's just say maybe our dear listener is unfamiliar. Can you talk to me about Hoodie or talk to us about Hoodie a bit?
Of course. So Hoodie is a JavaScript library that helps you prototype really fast applications. It has a built-in server and database. And what I liked about it the most was it was people-centered. So the API was like human. It was quite simple to understand because it was written in human.
As soon as you said the API was like a human, I got a little bit nervous that we were going to go a bit Skynet. But yeah, it was just made in sort of a very familiar, human-friendly way.
Exactly. So for example, when you wanted to save something, you said Hoodie store add and added a blob or an object, whatever you wanted.
Oh.
And that was it.
That's very friendly. Hoodie, do this, please.
Yeah.
So like a JavaScript rapid prototyping Siri.
Yes, pretty much that. And through the point that it was like very human friendly, the community was quite big at some point, and we tried to be as welcoming as possible because a lot of new people came in really fast. And I love this so much because we started to enable people, and people were able to like build things really fast without like a big amount of knowledge they needed to have for that. That was lovely.
So like human-friendly APIs, human-friendly community, people could get started across different skill levels. Hoodie sounds pretty great. But what happened next? Did you just stay working for agencies and doing some Hoodie stuff? Probably not if you're at Mozilla.
No, I started working full-time on Hoodie. I worked there for like 3.5 years. And also still organized those conferences. So one of the conferences... Sorry.
I blame me.
One of them was Reject.js. That was part of JSConf EU. And I finally understood how the community works and like got to know a lot of amazing human beings, and I fell in love with it. I just, yeah, it was so welcoming and warm, and didn't matter if you're a speaker or someone who started working with JavaScript like a week ago. And I think that's very, very special.
I'm seeing a lot of themes come up again and again, like, hey, humans being decent to each other, humans being decent to computers, and computers being decent to humans.
Exactly.
So, yeah, you were running conferences.
Yeah, I was running conferences, and at some point I also started speaking.
As you do, because you had all that free time.
Exactly, because I still had so much time left. I was like, what should I do with my life? Surprise, what I liked the most to speak about were really hard topics made like really, really simple. For example, I just gave a talk at JSConf.eu about TCP, which people do not like, but I explained it with pancakes.
People do like pancakes generally.
Yeah, like everyone likes pancakes, right?
I'll go ahead and call it, yeah.
And we did like a live simulation of slow start with pancakes. And this is what I like to do. I like to make things simple and empower people. And this is definitely a theme that it's going on.
Does that talk exist anywhere, sort of recorded on the web, just in case any of us wanted to hate TCP a little bit less through pancakes?
I think it will be released in the next 2 weeks. So probably when the podcast will be out, it might already be on.
Oh, no, we totally record these live, right?
Oh, I didn't know that. So yeah, wait 2 weeks.
No, we edit these. It's fine. So yes, immediately after this podcast airs, it's going to be available.
Definitely.
So how'd you make the jump to Mozilla? I've talked to a lot of people where this would be their dream job. They've said, wow, if I could work anywhere, I'd work at Mozilla. How did you do it?
That was actually a fun story. So a few years back when I stopped working at Hoodie, I wanted to do something else. And people from Mozilla were like, look, you're perfect for this position. It's like, oh, cool. Yeah, I would totally want to do this. Then suddenly the team was gone and there was no position left. So I started at a startup and was there for like about a year. It was interesting. It was an AI-driven layout engine. I thought like, hey, that's cool. It's interesting. But it was a startup, right?
Yeah.
So a few months later, after like I started there, I spoke by accident at a Mozilla conference. And on the very last day, someone approached me and was like, hey, there's this job you would be actually a good fit for. Of course, I was like, yeah, sure. Because like, of course, it won't work out. But it did, surprisingly. And I think the most funny thing about it was that my manager spoke at the exact same slot. We sat behind the stage and we're like so nervous and sweaty and actually didn't talk at all. But yeah, he ended up being my manager.
So you got, hey, come and work at Mozilla from being a lovely person who is nice to computers and nice to other people and doing some outreach.
I think that is summed up really well. Thank you for that. I think most people at Mozilla are pretty much that. Yeah.
So if somebody was absolutely eager to work for Mozilla, they wanted to work for the free and open web, step one would be nice?
Yeah. This is a requirement we have, like be nice to each other, definitely.
Bare minimum, don't be jerks. If you want to come work at Mozilla, be especially nice.
Yeah, we sort actually those people out really quick. I think someone with a big ego wouldn't make it that far.
You can be a little bit more subtle. I'm not going to apply for a job. It's fine.
You should.
Now here at Mozilla, you're getting paid to work on open source as part of your core duties.
Yeah, again, which is amazing. This is, I think, something that I love the most because I can code. I'm pretty free in what I do. Of course, we have OKRs, but I can either mentor people to work on specific things or I can work on them. And there's always like an interaction with the community, which I love. I couldn't wish for anything better, to be honest. But open source is hard, right? It's hard.
So if I'm listening to this podcast and I'm like, wow, you know what? I've always wanted to try open source. I wanted to get started. I wanted to get involved with a project. Where on earth would I start?
There are a lot of brilliant projects actually that would love to help you out with this. For example, Your First PR is a really good project that mark very specific issues in various projects. It will give you a list of starter issues. Starter issues have a very small scope. They're normally predefined, very strict, so you exactly know what to do, how to do it, and it's mostly they are there to onboard you in a project and like take away all the fear that you might have or anxiety. There's also the Open Source Friday. This is an initiative, I think, by GitHub. And they pretty much explain everything you need to know about how to do it, which projects are out there, who's looking for what. They're like full lists. So if you just check it out, it will definitely be a very first good step.
That sounds like a fantastic first step. But what I really want to dig into, and which you absolutely managed to ace, is how would somebody go from making that first contribution, that first engagement, into finding meaningful work, getting paid to do open source? What would I need to do in between that first step and looking for open source work? Should I contribute to a bunch of different projects? Should I focus on one or two?
That's a very good question. I think there are a lot of projects out there, and not all of them will be something you will enjoy. Because every project is differently structured, the tonality is very different. Some of the projects are very welcoming to people who are completely new to a language, for example, or a specific community. Some of them require a very long time of contributions. So just check out how much you like the tonality, I'd say, how much you enjoy interacting with the people.
That is so diplomatic. You're like, well, feel out whether or not you want to work with them.
Yeah, I think because it's your free time, right?
Yeah.
It's your choice. It's your free time. So you should decide where you want to actually put your time. And this should be valued by the people who are actually running the project, right?
So make sure that they're not just building something you're interested in with technology you're interested in, but also that they're people you would want to spend even online time with, people you'd want to engage with, and that as you contribute, that they're treating you like you belong. They're treating you like you're adding value.
Yeah, that's definitely the best case, I'd say. I'm not sure if you find that many projects that are that perfect. So I'd say lowest bar is feel comfortable in your contributions and learn something. Be able to learn something.
Yeah, if you're going to invest your time, these seem like pretty reasonable basic bars for what to get back.
I hope so.
But shall we fast forward in time?
Uh-huh.
We've made our first couple of contributions. We've looked around. We found, let's say, an open source project that we're really putting a lot of time in. We like them, they like us. But doing a lot of work for free isn't super sustainable.
Mm-hmm.
Should I wait until maybe they advertise that they've got a role? Should I go talk to them? What's a potential good next step?
I think both steps are reasonable. So either you look out and see if they have new opportunities. But also, for example, webcompat.com have a lot of really nice and great and lovely and amazing contributors. And we look out if there is maybe a role that would fit them. And I think after some time and spending some time with the team and maybe also participating in the meetings, I think it's reasonable to ask them at some point, be like, hey, I'm looking for a job right now. Or maybe in the future, could you just let me know?
Yeah, that seems reasonable and that doesn't seem too scary.
Yeah. And I mean, when you know those people, why not?
Yeah. Just saying oh, hey, if something does open up, it'd be really nice to work together sometime.
Yes, exactly.
But if you're waiting to work for a very specific open source project, that could take a little while, right?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Definitely. I mean, it depends on how much budget, for example, they have. A lot of smaller open source projects don't have money. Some of them aren't be able to pay anyone. So just make sure they actually can.
So first check and make sure the maintainer's pulling a paycheck before you're like, hey, can I get paid?
Exactly.
But the skills you're developing working on one open source project are pretty transferable to other projects. How would you talk about them in your resume or CV, or how would you advertise your skills more widely?
That's a very good question. I think what you definitely need is a really good communication skill, because it's just issues. So basically you're writing all the time, right? So you have to also be able to argue and make your point, but still be polite and respectful to others. And I think...
Whoa, I've got to communicate?
Yeah.
But I get to argue.
Yeah.
All right. So I was a little bit shaky on the I have to write a lot and I have to communicate well. But then you told me I have to get to argue. And I'm right back in the game. All right, cool.
Well, sometimes you have, right? Sometimes you would love to have a specific feature or have this amazing idea where you're like, can we build this? Can we build this? I totally have time. I want to build this. And then you probably get some context and realize, oh, it's not that easy, but still want to do this, right? And people are like, no, right now we don't want to do this because there are other important things. You might have to argue. You might be like, but look, it would be great. This would be like a benefit. So it always depends.
But I won't have to compromise. I just argue.
Some people do, but never ends up well. So maybe at some point, maybe you have to compromise. Maybe.
So you're telling me that to get paid to work on open source, I'm going to have to be nice and focus on like people and human needs. What? Maybe that's just Mozilla. And then I'm going to have to write a lot and communicate well and compromise.
Yeah.
But I get to argue.
Yeah. So everything summed up together, be a decent human being.
This sounds exhausting.
Well, yeah, this is what I meant when I said before, open source is hard. It can be very exhausting. People are people, and some people aren't that nice, right? I had this like in previous open source projects where people thought it would be okay to request specific features and be very rude about it, or be mad because you didn't check the PR for like 2 hours and they're waiting for you, but you also have a life. And open source burnout is a thing. It definitely is a thing.
So for folks who haven't heard about burnout, or let's say, maybe just say folks who haven't experienced it yet and hopefully never will, can you talk to me a little bit about what open source burnout is?
Open source burnout is at some point the feeling that you are irreplaceable and you have to be there 24/7 without any break.
Oh.
So those people are basically always on the phone, always on the computer, always available. And when people have questions, they answer them, but they also stop having a life or sleep or eat or, well, yeah, stop having friends.
Oh, I'm super into open source, but also super into food. This sounds quite challenging.
It is. It is. I had 3 burnouts yet. I think I learned because the last one took me 3 years to get out. So I have specific times where I'm like, nope, sorry, I'm not replying. No one will die just because I won't reply to this PR right now. And it's okay. It's definitely okay.
So talking about having experienced burnout in the context of an open source project yourself and having bounced back from it, what kinds of things should we look out for? If I'm really working on this project and I love it, what are sort of some healthy limits to be setting?
I think healthy limits are to think about how much time you actually have to contribute during the week, because most of us work, have a life, and sleep sometimes even. I know, shocking. So just think about how much time you would like to contribute. How much do you learn and get out of the specific thing? And what do you want to get out of it? And the moment you realize you didn't eat enough during the day, didn't drink enough during the day, or told your friends maybe 3 times in a row that you actually do not have time because you have to fix this one thing, this should be like your alarm should go off.
Yeah, almost like It's a drug when you start prioritizing it over your friends and family, when you find it impacting your health. It's time to take a break.
Definitely, yes. I mean, work can be a drug. It can be.
And if you do start to feel burned out, what are things like, do you realize right away, oh, I'm getting a bit burned out? Or does it sneak up on you a bit?
As far as I experience it, it always sneaks up on me. At some point, I realized, oh no, I can't get out. It was always the point where everyone was so, or it felt like so dependent on what I was doing and me being there and available that I felt just I couldn't stop. But when I stopped...
But you did stop.
Yeah. And hey, the world's still here. People are still working on this project. And some might not have the exact context they might need or information, but they're just doing their best. And either I'm there and can help out, or you review the PR and be like, I'm so sorry, but I missed this before. This was the context, but let's fix it together. Everything is fine.
So a lot of the things we've been touching on, even before we got to burnout, when you were talking about challenges in open source and challenges in getting into a role, a paid role in open source, a lot of the things you mentioned seem to focus a lot more on humans than the actual code.
Yeah, I truly believe that open source is about humans. And it's not just about code. I also see people that don't code as open source contributors, and maybe even the more important part of it. So people who write documentation or do design or project management, which is extremely important for open source projects, or marketing, like go out and speak about something specific. I think this is like 90% of the project itself.
So you talked about people who work in open source and work on open source who aren't programmers.
Yeah.
Are these people just contributing in a unpaid sort of contribution way? Or are there jobs for people in open source that aren't coding?
Oh, both. I think a lot of projects, for example, are looking for technical writers, like a lot. There's this initiative called Write the Docs. They try to document as much as possible of projects or, well, the web itself. And I think that's one of the most important things, because without documentation, no one will understand things really fast, right? So it's enabling people. When you have that and experience in this, you can also write in a different way as your paid job about open source projects, because then you kind of understand how those things work, what it's important for people, right, to read and know.
Yeah. I've never waded into an open source project and thought, wow, I wish they spent less time on documentation.
I had that actually for the very first time recently.
Really?
Yeah, I was like, that is a lot of documentation I have to read through. It's amazing, but it's a lot. And it was very, very good.
Which project is this?
That was Perf HTML.
Oh.
That's one of the teams I'm actually on. And Greg loves writing documentation, which was brilliant because it onboarded me within a week.
That sounds flawless.
Yeah.
So what other kinds of jobs might be out there that are non-coding paid jobs in open source? We touched on technical writing, which seems like a really fantastic way to break into paid work in open source.
Yeah.
What else might be out there?
So definitely design. Everything regarding web design is like super, super important, because a lot of engineers, it's not their expertise to do UX and do design, right? So they always love to help those people, to help them out and help actually the users that use their project to like onboard. So when you've done that, your tolerance to frustration is like solid. I think that goes for everyone in open source. I think you can work in a very different way than as a web designer or UX person or others.
So it sounds like there's sort of the exact same range of roles you'd see in a software company or a tech company, but that exists across open source projects.
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, is it that much different, with just the difference that you don't get paid? But it's actually not.
No.
Yeah.
You don't always get paid.
Yeah, you don't get paid in open source, like most of the times. If you do, you're like so lucky, right?
Like score. What other kinds of tips would be really valuable for somebody looking to move from a role contributing to open source in their free time into working in open source? Is visibility and outreach, is that important? Is networking important? Help.
Yes. Short, yes.
Just do all the things.
Yeah, I don't think you have to be like super visible, but if you want to get a job, you should be visible. It doesn't mean that you have to go to conferences and speak, but you should contribute to the community. So, for example, there are so many amazing projects out there. There help and people to learn code, for example, right?
Yeah.
Or design, or like there's so many great initiatives. So if you just help out there, it will help you on the one hand understand the community better, which is always a big benefit for open source companies because we need this. You will also help the community itself because you will contribute back. And you will always build a network from people who are new, from people who are there for a very long time. I think the community is the most important part because everyone in the community is looking out for each other. If there's a job and they know you would really love to have it, they will support you and help you to actually get there.
If you want to be discovered, you probably need to be someplace people can see you.
Yeah, kind of. If you can't travel much as I can't, because solo parent, right? And school holidays.
Yeah, I'm told that'll do it.
I think the internet is a great place. For example, Twitter. Twitter is great. But if you just want to get more content out and be like known for the content, so why not doing a podcast? Ta-da!
I hear all the cool kids are running podcasts now.
Oh yeah. I would do that if I would understand the software, because I don't.
We'll have to do a podcast episode on podcasting sometime soon.
Ooh, that would be nice. So that would be great. Write blog posts on things you're interested in or something that you're just learning. When you are learning about this right now, someone else probably will be interested in that because they haven't. So just write. Oh, you can do so many things, right?
So to recap, you mentioned getting to events and meeting people, speaking at events. You talked about teaching and mentoring, especially newbies. You talked about actively contributing, be it documentation, design, code, project management. And then you talked about either engaging with people on social media or getting a mic and becoming a podcaster, or you can go ahead and write blog posts and tutorials about what you're learning as you learn it.
Exactly.
These are a lot of options.
They are. I think there's always an option for someone who wants to get into open source. You just need to find your thing.
What kind of advice would you give someone who not just wanted to work in open source, not just wanted to get paid to work in open source, but they wanted to come and work at Mozilla?
Okay, so you should know what you like to do. You should know what you're really passionate about and go from there. Be a decent human being helps. And also definitely be involved into a community, because I think, as far as I understood, Mozilla is looking for people who definitely match the hard skills, right? So you should be able to do things that the job description wants you to. If they want a JavaScript engineer, you should know how JavaScript works and might be even able to code in it. But the more important part is the social skills. So communication, understanding what open source actually is and means, and again, decent human being.
This sounds like fantastic general advice. Be nice. It probably won't hurt you, and it might help you get a job.
Yeah.
If somebody wanted to find out more about the projects you work on at Mozilla, where could they find information on these online?
You can either go to webcompet.com, which is our tool to track web compatibility bugs, or perf-html.io, which is our profiler. Those would be the two.
And where, if they wanted more of your words of wisdom, could they find you online?
So I'm mostly on Twitter. I misprinted type on Twitter, but I apologize for my tweets in advance. They're mostly feminist rants, dog videos, and kiddo content. From time to time, some tech.
This sounds like most of my Twitter feed.
I love that. There are a lot of talks, I think, on YouTube. When I check myself up on YouTube, I just know where I've been because of the hair color on the pre-screenshot.
Fantastic. So these are all places that people can find you online.
Yes.
If you want to see a graphical representation of this episode of the podcast, find us on Twitter. We're @PursuitPod. Ola, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me and for your time. It was lovely.
And thank you for listening. If you want to see this week's sketch notes or find out more about what's coming up, find us on Twitter @PursuitPod. Next week, we're going to be joined by someone very special who's going to be talking to us about CSS animations, but also what it's like to relocate for your job.